We will begin. Firstly, Council acknowledges the Wadawurrung traditional owners of this land, and I pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging, to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are part of the Greater Geelong community today. I think, as you probably know, if you're watching on the live stream, it's being broadcast on the internet, and the recording of this meeting will be published also on the Council's website. A copy of the Council's live streaming and recording of Council meetings policy is available at not at the back of the room because nobody's here at the moment, but usually it is, but you can actually have a look at it on the website. So if you ever need it, that's the place to go, is the Greater Geelong website. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for tuning in. Given the continuing circumstances where we can't actually have members of the community here with us in the gallery, not yet anyway, we're getting closer, we are glad that we can still share our meetings with you via the live stream. And I've just acknowledged the traditional owners, which is an important part of every meeting that this council does, but it's especially pertinent tonight given that it's National Sorry Day. And this is a day where we recognise the grief, the suffering and the injustice experienced by the stolen generations as we continue the reconciliation process between Australia's Indigenous peoples and the settler population. And tomorrow marks the beginning of National Reconciliation Week, and the theme this year is In This Together. This theme reminds us that we need to work as one on reconciliation, and the Council's recently shown its commitment on this process and to this process by adopting the region's first ever Reconciliation Action Plan, which is fondly known as the RAP. Reconciliation Week is an opportunity for us to celebrate the rich culture and heritage of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. And while we won't be able to gather together for celebrations as we normally would, and we normally do, there are a number of online events that we can all get involved in. So please head to the homepage of Geelong Australia website and search Reconciliation Week, and you'll find a page with all the details of how to be involved. Next, another big thank you to everybody for your ongoing efforts in following the restrictions that are aimed at slowing the spread of the coronavirus. The state government's gradual easing of the restrictions earlier this week is very welcome and a reward for all the effort everybody's put in. Today we've seen the first wave of school students back in the classroom. I think there's probably a few little shouts of joy there, not least from the students. And the City of Greater Geelong has been able to also reopen playgrounds, skate parks and outdoor gym equipment. There are still limits and rules in place to protect everybody's health and safety, and of course there are even further changes coming into effect next Monday, so that'll be a step forward for the local economy as we do begin the recovery process. And the government's ability to make these decisions is thanks to your dedication to following the restrictions and staying apart from others, practising that good hygiene, the washing of hands, and getting tested, of course, if you're experiencing symptoms. So please keep up the great work. Let's maintain the momentum that we've built. There are more activities that you're allowed to do, increasingly so, but while doing them, just please remember, keep up the social distancing. Really importantly, stay at home if you're feeling unwell. Don't go to work, don't go shopping, don't visit family and friends if you're not feeling well. So thank you, everybody. We'll get straight into the meeting now. Firstly, we don't have any apologies that I know of to note. Leaves of absence. Do we have any leaves of absence to record? No requests? No, everybody's loving it so much they don't want to take a break. That's great. Confirmation of the minutes. Can I please have a mover and seconder to confirm the minutes of the council meeting held on the 28th of April 2020? Thank you, Councillor Murray. Seconded, Councillor Aitken. Thank you. All those in favour? Thank you. Declarations of conflict of interest. I think I have a couple. Councillor Aitken. Item number 2 for Councillor Aitken and Item 8 for Councillor Contell. Thank you. Anybody else? If any conflicts do arise during the meeting, please make them known. Although we still don't have members of the community here in the gallery tonight to ask questions or make submissions, we have been accepting them online, and it's also important to note that each councillor does receive and read every question and submission sent in. So please continue to use the question or question time portal on the website to ask a question if you have any. 4 people submitted questions for tonight, so thank you to Jennifer Banto, Michelle Fielding, Margaret Nash and Leanne Crocker. Jennifer, Margaret, Michelle and Leanne have all received a response to their questions via email. Now, we're not reading out questions in the chamber just yet, but we are publishing them online on the website, as well as in the minutes of this meeting, which will be available online by Friday. So again, please visit the website, which is geelongaustralia.com.au/meetings, to access all the information about these council meetings. Now, we will be extending our meeting time beyond the 2 hours after tonight. Tonight will still be restricted to the 2 hours, but as the restrictions ease a little bit, we will be able to review how we do question time, and we're also considering how we can let members of the public back into the gallery. That's no promise that we'll be able to fill it, but we're certainly investigating how we can go about that, just so that we can allow more interaction with the submissions, the questions and the answers. So watch this space, or actually go to the website and watch that space to see what happens with updates there. Now, do we have a petition? I believe we do, to be tabled. Councillor Murray.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. 2 weeks ago, I presented a petition just in relation to the proposal of planting of a number of trees at St Helens Park. There's been quite a number of further signatures to that, and I'll just tender that now.
Great.
Tender.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Thank you, Jake. Okay, any other petitions? No? Okay, Section B, reports. The first item on tonight's agenda is the community feedback in relation to dogs in public places and on land managed by the Barwon Coast Committee of Management. This is an amendment, I believe, to be moved by Councillor Sullivan and seconded by Councillor Mason. Thank you, Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. All right, so the item we have before us is draft dog control orders for land management managed by Barwon Coast Committee of Management. In 2019, Barwon Coast Committee of Management, BCCM, requested Council consider adopting proposed changes to the existing orders. Council then endorsed a public exhibition of draft dog orders on our September the 10th meeting 2019. The draft orders are aimed at simplifying the existing orders and provide a balance arrangement for dog owners and non-dog owners alike. A 6-week community engagement process was conducted by the City, and we had over 592 submissions or participants, which is a very large amount of feedback, for our survey, correspondence and face-to-face community meetings. So a great turnout and input from the community. Dog order controls may seem to be contrasting views between dog owners and non-dog owners, and BCCM and the City seek to find an appropriate balance that provides areas for both members of our community to safely enjoy, especially the coast, and whilst protecting our significant environmental values. Consultation findings indicated that both dog and non-dog owners, members of the community, have a desire to improve sharing of coastal space. However, expression was made for the need for some modifications to be made to the orders, which is why we have them before here. Very importantly as well, the summer season, when our town grows 3 to 4 times the amount. There were a minority of number of dog and non-dog owners who had firm and contrasting views on either side, but we found we managed to meet somewhere in the middle here, so all parties should be happy. It's with that I move the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Councillor Mason.
Thank you, Mayor Asher, and I endorse the words said by Councillor Sullivan. Certainly is a very difficult issue, and this has been the product of a very careful community consultation with the coastal communities, first with the Bellarine Correction, the Barwon Coast Committee of Management, and now with the City of Greater Geelong. This process is not over, actually. We must now, with this resolution, go back to the Barwon Coast Committee of Management for endorsement before it's finally endorsed by this city. So it's a long process, and we've been really working hard towards a result. And it's really not easy for us to get the correct balance. We can't please everybody, especially with the dog situation. There are elderly people, young families, horse riders, not all, but some, that can feel threatened by dogs, on the leash and off the leash. And similarly, there are many other people who love their dogs and regard them as part of their family. And so we all do have to live together, we all do have to share the coast, and we have to try for a win-win situation. Ultimately, we need cooperative compliance. And I think that, especially with this amendment, But with all of the other, this is actually a minor amendment amongst all of the other work that's been done. And I think we've found the sweet spot of compliance. And so I endorse the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. Any other comments on these dog orders? I'll probably make a couple of quick comments, given that this is my local area in particular. This does stretch from Connewarra through to Colindina Beach, which is the City of Greater Geelong area, and where we actually enforce the orders which are put in place by Bowen Coast. So the orders are the rules by Bowen Coast, and the enforcement is what City of Greater Geelong does. Now, my experience with dogs is the big issues that people have with dogs are the occasional aggressive or poorly behaved dog and the annoyance of dog poo that is not picked up and disposed of properly. Now, both of those things are actually enforcement issues, not dog orders issues. So this is about the orders, and this actually brings us right into line neatly with the rest of the Surf Coast, so Torquay and Anglesea, Lorne, etc. And I think they're a really good set of orders, and I think they've been done really well. I think the amendment that Councillor Sullivan has put in is terrific. It's exactly probably what I've been hearing from the community, that we're not about too many rules and banning. It's actually about working together and sharing and cooperating. So I commend Councillor Sullivan on putting this forward. And I think we should go ahead and move the motion. Is there any other comment from anybody? Councillor Sullivan, to close.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for your words, and to Councillor Mason as well. Dog orders can be a very highly emotive topic. People love their pets, that's their right, want to take them everywhere. And there's also people who desire to not be around animals, and there's also their right. This whole process is about making the rules simpler, friendlier for all, and easy to follow. And I believe we found that equilibrium. So I'm happy to move this and send it off to BCCM for them to review. Thank you.
Thank you. The motion to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. Those against? Carried. Second item is the draft Sale Yards Precinct Plan Consultation, to be moved by Councillor Murray and seconded by Councillor Contell. Councillor Aitkins just left the room. Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In August 2018, this council resolved to support a residential and mixed-use development on the former Geelong Sale Yard site. So tonight is to seek endorsement to release the draft Sale Yards Precinct Plan for public consultation. This plan outlines the background, policy context, site analysis, consultation, design principles, framework plan, concept plan and implementation plan, which will inform the future use and development of the precinct. A mixed-use development which includes predominantly medium to high density residential development with supporting retail and commercial uses and high quality parkland and streetscapes have been identified as the preferred use within the precinct. Of course, the historic 148-year-old Sale Yards use and heritage asset of the site will remain on show, including some of the cattle yards and ramp, bluestone drain, the central thoroughfare, and I love this one, the latrines shed. Interesting to see what they do with that. It should be noted that the precinct plan area consists of the Sale Yard site, the Target Australia site, the Sphinx Hotel and other land holdings. And of course, the benefit of the council being a major landholder in this project is the opportunity to show leadership and deliver identified affordable housing options. The precinct will, as I said, will be of high quality and sustainable and be addition to the local urban fabric. 4 hectares of publicly accessible open space and will accommodate 1,300 residents when completed, being 660 dwellings. And the mixed-use portion of the site will provide approximately 1,800 square metres of retail on the ground floor. So there was workshops held September last year to give the landowners, community and key stakeholders an opportunity to inform the plan. These workshops looked at preferred outcomes, opportunities and challenges. Consultation on the draft precinct plan will allow further engagement and feedback before the plan is finalised and the vision for the site starts to be realised. The consultation for this project will be designed to respond to current circumstances around COVID-19, and the period will be 8 weeks to give the opportunity and the community adequate time to engage in the process. In lieu of face-to-face consultation, the community will have an opportunity to engage through a variety of online platforms. Documents will be accessible online, and those who may have specific questions may be accommodated through phone calls and online meetings. And previous submitters, key landholders and stakeholders will be directly notified, and notices will be placed in local newspapers and on the city's websites. So it's there for everybody to see. It's going out for 8 weeks for public consultation, and I urge all those interested to get on, have a look at it and make some comment. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Murray. Councillor Contell.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Look, this is an extremely important matter for the community, and you know, I posted a short video on the socials on the weekend about the importance of engaging community in important planning decisions and matters such as this. And what happens is with major developments such as this is they get some high profile for a while in the media, but then when the planning process and the consultation starts, community is not aware of it. So there's a lot going on in Geelong West with the PACO UDF at the moment that's out there. We've got all the funding in the budget for the West Oval development, and then you've got this large parcel of land there in Geelong West which doesn't come up often in suburbia. And so whilst it was a sad day when the sale yards closed, this is probably now the next most important period in this land's history, because this is now a time where community and council and stakeholders will be deciding what we do with this land going forward. So it's extremely important that the community familiarise themselves with this precinct plan so they can help shape what we do and what occurs in this space going forward. So whether you live in the area or not, if you have any interest in Geelong or any interest in this area of Geelong, please make some effort to familiarise yourself with the precinct plan. If you have a business in the area, if you're involved with the sporting clubs around the area, if you're involved with the multicultural aged care services that are around there, it's extremely important that now you familiarise yourself, you ask questions, you call your ward councillors if you need to know more, to really engage in this process so that we try to get the best possible outcome going forward. This is really exciting. It's a really exciting opportunity to revitalise that area, which has now been sitting stagnant for many, many years. And there's some really exciting opportunities there to be able to have the complemented use of a mixed-use development, which can enhance not only the area for the community that's living there, but also those that may be working in the area going forward, and also green spaces that might be able to be introduced there going forward as well. So extremely important that you get involved in the PACO UDF, but equally this area which is just across the road, so they will be really complementing each other. So.
Councillor Contell. Councillor Mason.
Thank you, Mayor Asher, and I endorse the words of Councillor Murray and Councillor Contell, and in particular, thank you for mentioning the history, Councillor Contell. This is certainly a good plan, and it's the good basis for further consultation. And as Chair of the Heritage Advisory Committee, I'm pleased that it's been passed through the consultation with that committee, and I'm pleased that heritage is recognised in the this development plan. Equally, as Chair of the Rural and Peri-Urban Advisory Committee, I understand that the closure of these antiquated yards was timely and appropriate. But unfortunately, I just have to say that their replacement has not been timely, and we are waiting now for a feasibility study to be completed so we can find the way forward. But I do endorse this particular motion, and one of the things that's really important is that this developments quite close to the railway station, and it is highly suitable for high and medium density living. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. Any other comments on this one? Councillor Murray, to close.
Yes, thank you. Well, really, just to reinforce my original comments and those of Councillor Contell, that now the public has 8 weeks to be involved in this project, have their say, and agree with Councillor Contell's comments that we have Paddington Street and the Gordon Avenue UDF not far away, and the Western Oval development. So it's certainly an area that in a few years' time there will be different than what it is now. So get on to the Have Your Say website, and if you've got strong feelings about this, have your say. Thank you.
Good encouragement. Thanks, Councillor Murray. I'll put this one to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. Those against? Carried. Get Councillor Aitken back in. Someone's calling him. Okay. Here he is, coming back in. So we move to item 3. Welcome back, Councillor Aitken. Item 3, Amendment 3C394GGEE, Bellarine Peninsula and Corio Bay land subject to inundation overlay. Consideration of the panel report and adoption, to be moved by Councillor Sullivan and seconded by Councillor Mason. Thank you, Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for saying that mouthful of a title, so I don't have to go over that again. The amendment we have before us includes planning scheme policy changes and applies a new land subject to inundation overlay to 1,600 properties based on a 0.8 metre sea level rise and a 1% annual exceedance probability storm surge event, as is required by the state government policy. The areas this covers in the amendment are parts of Geelong, Port Arlington, Moolap, Newcombe, Barwon Heads, Ocean Grove, Indented Head, St Leonards, Swan Bay, Barwon River Estuary, Avalon and Bramley. Now, in May 2019, Council resolved to support public exhibition of the amendment, which occurred in July-August 2019, with notice sent to around roughly 2,000 owners and occupiers. A total of 43 submissions were received, including 39 objections. Then in November 2019, Council resolved to refer these submissions to an independent panel as required under the Planning and Environment Act. The panel was held in February 2020 and provided its report to Council again in April this year. The panel report supports the amendment and commends Council on its forward-looking and proactive approach in preparing the amendment, stating that the overlay is the most appropriate planning tool available to address the risk of sea level rise and storm tide surges. It states that the amendment is well-founded and strategically justified and provides net community benefit, which is fantastic to hear. Now, this will certainly not be a set-and-forget amendment. It will require constant updating as time goes by and more information comes to light. A lot of hard work has gone into this, and I believe it's a fantastic amendment. And I'm happy to move that Council adopt the amendment and send it off to the Minister for Planning for approval. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Councillor Mason.
Thank you, Mayor Asher. Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. I fully endorse the hard work that's been done by our officers. I think the hard work began something like in 2011, so it's been a long trek. And I've also been following it on the Coastal Adaption Committee, and there's quite a few stakeholders on that committee other than the City of Greater Geelong. There's the Borough of Queenscliff, Delp, Bellarine Bayside, Barwon Coast, Parks Vic and some other stakeholders. It's also part of the Our Coast project, and it actually, as Councillor Sullivan said, it stretches from Brimley all the way around through Queenscliff to Point Wilson. So I'm really grateful for all of the good work that's been done. And indeed, this work is a risk and litigation mitigation exercise, in that scientifically available data should be acted upon and that areas liable to flooding need to be properly mapped and advertised through the appropriate overlay. And it is, as I just said, minimising the danger of litigation in the future. And it applies a sea level rise of 0.8 metres by 2100, and a storm surge of 1% probability, 100-year probability, and the storm surge can in some areas be up to 1.6 metres. So in some areas it can mean a rise of water by 2.4 metres. All of this has to go into the overlay. And so I just want to note as well that Point Lonsdale at this stage on the Geelong side is not part of this. It's been excluded because there needs to be more revisions done because of the new waterways that are being developed there. So all in all, I endorse this amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. Councillor Mansfield.
Thank you, Mayor Asher. As Councillor Mason has highlighted, this overlay refers to a projected sea level rise of 0.8 metres by 2100. I think a lot of the scientific data now would suggest that if we only have 0.8 metres, we've done pretty well. We're on track to get much higher sea level rises than that. So this is the very least we should be doing at the moment in terms of mitigating risk of litigation. I think it does raise some broader questions about what other actions we should be looking at as a council and more broadly as a community when it comes to reducing the effects of climate change. I don't want to turn this into a climate change discussion, but it's, the reason we're actually applying this is because of the effects of climate change, and we're going to see more and more of these sorts of things come before us as council as we start to see an impact on things like development and the lives people are used to living and the freedoms they're used to having in terms of where they build houses. These sorts of things are going to become issues as we start to see more and more effects of climate change. I hope we see moving forward some more leadership and positive action on trying to reduce the impacts, reduce the risks of these things occurring in the first place.
Councillor Mansfield, well said, and I must say it's really good to see that this work is being done, because we do get asked quite a bit, what are we doing and have we thought about it, and we need to get into action around adaptation to climate change, and this is one of the things that obviously the City of Greater Geelong started quite a while ago. So, yep, fully support that, and the more of these sorts of things that we can continue doing under the sustainability framework, the better. Be great. Any other comments on this one? Councillor Aitken.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Look, Mike, I think it is important to acknowledge we were actually doing this work before we made our climate emergency declaration. We were doing this work before we adopted our sustainability framework, and in fact it has been recognised by the panel that council should be praised for actually doing this work, and because the panel did quote, council is forward-looking and proactive approach to preparing for the amendment. So in other words, we actually have been endorsed for our environmental credibility as a council, and I was really pleased to see that the panel recognised that and recognised the work that our officers have done in relation to this particular issue. And it should also be noted as well too that as much as we collectively have recognised that we have to acknowledge that there is a climate emergency, that we do have a sustainability framework that we have strongly endorsed as a council group as well too, that with this particular action, there were 39 people that objected to council actually doing this. And in fact, there was only 4 people who made submissions before the panel supporting the council. And and that's where it is very difficult as a councillor, because the panel can only make responses to what's actually presented them for them. So what did happen is that those people who support the need for significant action associated with climate change actually didn't even bother to make a submission to this significant planning panel recommendation, and that is disheartening because this is a major piece of planning work to address the concerns about rising sea levels in Corio Bay and the Ballerine Peninsula. But if the panel was actually just going on the numbers that presented before them, they quite easily could have rejected the amendment because most people said they didn't support it. And that's not the case of what is the collective position of this council group, and it certainly is not the collective position of the broader community of Geelong. But I encourage that those people have a strong passion for the environment in Geelong and environment action. They need to look at these type of actions and make sure that they're strongly supporting what council is doing in the future so that we're not seen to be just doing these things in isolation of everybody else.
Thank you, Councillor Aitken. Well said. Any other comments on this one? Back to Councillor Sullivan to close.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. And I thank all my councillors for their words and support them wholeheartedly. I'm happy to just move the motion.
Great, thank you. We'll put this one to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. Those against? Carried. Item 4, the food assistance business case, to be moved by Councillor Murnane and seconded Councillor Mansfield. Councillor Murnane.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have before us this evening the independent report commissioned by Council into emergency food relief in the Geelong region, and consistent with the findings of that individual report, we have the recommendation of Council officers. The independent report reveals that in the future, over 50,000 residents in the Geelong region are likely to access emergency food relief, and 16,000 of that number will be dependent on emergency food relief to feed themselves, their families at least one day a week, and many families a lot more frequently than one day a week. The report currently measures the demand for emergency food relief in the Geelong region at 2.5 million meals per annum, increasing to 3.2 million meals per annum in the next 10 years given our population growth and increasing levels of disadvantage in our communities. Currently, the industry in its current format can only meet a demand of 2,200 meals, 2,200,000 meals per annum, a potential shortfall of over 1 million meals per annum into the future. Whilst the current system is not broken, in fact it is struggling manfully under great stress, it urgently needs our help. This independent report makes some very clear recommendations. The establishment of a larger food distribution centre, the Geelong Food Hub, stronger levels of cooperation and coordination between the supply side and the retail side of the industry, broader governance and management within the industry, access and distributions to greater amounts of fresh food for all of the local agencies, flexibility to expand the nature of offerings and services to the local agencies in the future, and the better engagement of philanthropy and the management of volunteerism in the industry. All of these recommendations have been included in the proposal that is put before councillors tonight. The not-for-profit entity proposed to manage the new Geelong Food Hub has agreed to change its constitution to comply with all of the independent report's recommendations and will report back annually to Council on the community outcomes being achieved. Some of those significant changes will include a representative from either Food Bank Victoria, Second Bite or Fair Share will join their board. The standing chair of GFAN, that's the Geelong Food Assistance Network, the industry body representing some 60 or 70 smaller local agencies operating in the industry, will become a designated board position on the managing entity's board. The managing entity of the Geelong Food Hub will fund the secretariat of GFAN and provide an office for GFAN in the new Geelong Food Hub, and this funding of $20,000 for the secretariat will be guaranteed from the $150,000 annual contribution made by Council. Local agencies such as the Salvation Armies, Vinnies, United and other agencies will have access to office facilities within the new food hub to interview clients and, if necessary, to issue emergency food relief vouchers to their clients on the spot. There will also be vastly improved facilities for volunteers in the food hub. There is the inclusion of a training room for people who are referred to the food hub by agencies such as unemployment, disability, social justice, to upskill individuals in areas of food handling and logistics. A commercial kitchen will also be included in the facility to assist with the diversification of product offerings in the future. Madam Mayor, this is another first for Geelong. Never before have all of the major players in the emergency food relief industry come together in the one way to create a unique model, a model I believe will become the blueprint for all other regional cities around Australia to copy. Food security for disadvantaged is a growing problem across our nation, notwithstanding the fact that there is abundance all around us and humanity has never been richer. I also believe that this model for emergency food relief in the Geelong region will have a very positive impact on the work of other agencies operating in other areas of our community, such as homelessness, family violence, etc. One could claim that the completion of this project is a major achievement, and looking at it in isolation, it probably is. However, in reality, it is but a very small step in achieving the social equality that we want for our Geelong community. I commend council officers' recommendations to my fellow councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Manane. Councillor Mansfield.
I'll reserve my right.
Thank you. Any other councillors wish to comment on this one? Councillor Grisbeck.
This is a significant investment for council, and I don't think we've ever made this large an investment to address this community's issue of food shortage before in council's history. I think now more than ever, you know, we'll have, I think it was 16,000 Councillor Manane, people who would go hungry if it wasn't for the numerous food relief outlets across our whole region. From Lara Food Relief right down to Feed Me Ballerine and all of those in between will benefit from this investment. This investment will allow more food to be stored, more food to be brought to this area. This will then allow, hopefully, the Geelong Food Assistance Network to attract more philanthropic funds and also other levels of government who can support this issue in Geelong. Thanks to the independent report, we've now got a model for Geelong which I think will be sustainable, and it will enable the focus of these agents to be on finding those people who need the most help rather than having to worry about the funding and where the money is coming from. It certainly gives the food shortage issue a big boost in the positive direction. I mean, unfortunately, there are people in Geelong who heavily rely on this service, and now having this facility, which will be located in an area that is accessible. Thank you to those who have had input into this business case, and thanks to Councillor Manane for his persistence in this space. It just shows what council can do when it works with all the levels of the community on social issues, and where council can actually have a real input and a real say in what happens to our community, seen as we are the representatives. This will enhance the food shortage across the whole region, and I encourage all of those smaller but very important operations that happen across our municipality to get involved in this particular project, and I'm sure that we'll make all those details available for those that want it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grisbeck. Councillor Harwood.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just very quickly, first and foremost, just recognition to the work done by Councillor Manane and the coordination of the number of groups that are not-for-profits that are involved, and also his involvement in securing the premises out at North Geelong. It's probably fair to say it would not have happened without Councillor Manane's persistence and, I guess, doggedness in this particular matter. He won't say this, and he'll just read the recommendation as such, but I think it's worth noting on this occasion that this is one of the biggest things that Council has done, and it will reflect quite strongly in the future, and it couldn't have happened without the assistance of the other organisations and the region's food distribution and storage capacity that we have. But it still takes someone to actually put it together and get the parties together in order to agree to this particular outcome, which is going to have a huge impact on our region. And it would be really unfortunate or be disappointing if the media don't pick this up and really let the community know that the council has gone down this particular path, and the organisations that are also in this with council to make this happen. Not just short term, this is a long term proposition that we're putting together to make sure that people in our community don't go hungry, that the schools that provide the food programs are supported and families are supported when they are desperately in need, because as we do know, people do miss out on getting basic food and basic meals during the day. So I think it's a great result, and again, I don't think we shouldn't underestimate the work that's done behind the scenes by Councillor Manane. Thank you.
Councillor Harwood. Councillor Mason.
Thank you, Mayor Asher. I also enthusiastically applaud all the great work that's been done by all of the stakeholders and Councillor Manane. And I understand that without grassroots development, through volunteerism, which is really strong in Australia, food relief can be all the more difficult if it isn't done through this grassroots volunteerism. And I really see the need for close collaboration and coordination amongst all these stakeholders, and that's exactly what this model proposes. And it also proposes to support improved governance and capacity building over the years. So we've heard that every year there will be a review, and I'm sure this model will continue to evolve. And certainly we do need to work in our relief work using the same criteria, not a multitude of criteria. So I really do applaud this great work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. Councillor Aitken.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Look, I've expressed my opinion before, but I'm going to say it again, that the success of this project will be when it's closed, because the reality is that I am extremely uncomfortable that Geelong actually has an emergency food need that is growing at such a rapid rate. And I actually think the social licence in Australia in particular as a prosperous nation and a society that actually has an abundance of land and it has an abundance of space, that we have to continue to expand our emergency food relief because there's massive sections of the community that need it. And I actually strongly believe that the only way we are going to break the cycle is actually to look at alternative solutions and options. And I thank Councillor Manane for bringing this to our attention and the work that he's put into it, and the fact that we have an identifiable significant crisis in our community in Geelong for emergency food relief. However, the success will be when it's closed. That's the real success that we are going to have when public policy, when the community doesn't need to have emergency food relief in a prosperous society like Geelong. I mean, we don't have localised gardens that actually create food for people that actually can't grow it at their own site location. If we do start introducing that, it will create local communities that create food relief at their localised level. We do have tremendous organisations that are trying to break the cycle and actually give the skill levels to those people that are needing emergency food relief so that they can move away from these type of mega institutions that have been around and been established. And ultimately, I hope in 15 or 20 years' time, we can actually say in Geelong, we don't need emergency food relief, and we certainly don't need it to the size that's being presented under this model, because we've been able to break the cycle for a lot of members of our community that don't need to emergency food relief. Clearly, the statistics are showing at this point in time it is a major issue and it does need to be addressed, and Councillor Manane has brought that to our attention. But us as councillors, and in terms of our strategic direction on this, we should be challenging the food relief community and we should be challenging our state and federal colleagues. What are they actually doing to break the cycle about emergency food relief and ensure that the prosperity and the health and well-being of all our citizens is actually met? This proposal doesn't give the answer to that, but hopefully the focus of people on and the attention drawn to the magnitude of emergency food relief that's needed in Geelong will start encouraging people to think how we are going to break this cycle. And unfortunately, we're not going to break it by just building bigger warehouses and more capacity in this area. We have to significantly invest in new public policy and re-establish the social licence for everybody in Geelong, that food no longer becomes an emergency issue. Food is something that you sustain yourself and have capacity to be able to do that.
Thank you, Councillor Aitken. Good point. On that topic, I just said no one else is jumping in. This is actually all about social sustainability, and for council, managing sort of how our communities thrive and survive is just as important as how we manage our financial responsibilities and our physical environment too. So again, that's that triple bottom line approach that we've started to take, which is really critical. Any other comments before Councillor Mansfield?
Thank you, Mayor Asher, and thanks to the other councillors who've spoken on this issue. I reiterate the comments made about Councillor Monane's incredible hard work and vision when it's come to this issue. I think this is a really outstanding bit of work that's come before us, and it is really, it wouldn't be here if it hadn't been for Councillor Monane's hard work on this particular issue. I agree with the comments made by Councillor Aitken that the success of this will be seen and we no longer need it, although I think I think we need to look more deeply at what the drivers of food relief are, and as this report really nicely outlines, it identifies all those things that are drivers. The biggest driver is having a low income, and we have a significant portion of our population who are on very, very low incomes. It leads to not just food shortage, but a whole range of other problems: housing stress, rental stress. It's strongly linked with homelessness and domestic violence, and a range of other social problems. And the fundamental driver of that is being on low incomes. And I think, unfortunately, in this current COVID-19 environment and the huge additional burdens that's placed on a lot of people in our community, we're only going to see more people have hits to their incomes and be driven to situations where they have experience food insecurity. The number that Councillor Grisbeck referred to earlier of around, I think it's around 16,000 people that they're estimating. They're people who experience the most severe food shortage. So they're people who have chronics. There's long-standing food shortages for pretty much all of the meals every day. And for me, that's just. It's hard to get your head around that many people in our community are struggling to get 3 meals a day long term, and it's the tip of the iceberg. There are tens of thousands more who experience intermittent patches of food insecurity, and then many, many more who perhaps can source their own food but of very poor quality or not sufficient food for their needs. So we have a great need in our community. It is growing. Until we address the drivers of food insecurity, so that's things outside of this effort, we won't see the end of this, and unfortunately I don't see that happening anytime soon, and certainly not very quickly. I'd love to see the low income issue being addressed much with a great deal more effort and interest from other levels of government. But at this stage, we have a huge immediate need in our community. It's growing, and I think what's been presented to us represents a really fantastic opportunity for Geelong to show the way in how, in an approach towards managing food relief, putting together a range of organisations, improving their governance, efficiency and coordination, and hopefully it'll deliver a great deal more food relief for those who are in need in our community.
Councillor Mansfield. Councillor Manane to close.
Thank you, everybody. I think just taking up the point that's been well made over there, the pandemic that we've seen of 300,000 people dying in the world has been very visible. I think the pandemic that we haven't seen yet is the rich have just got richer and the poor have just got poorer. And that reflects on this. Can I just indulge you for one moment to thank the people who really should be thanked here? Firstly, my fellow councillors, and it's been a 2-year journey, and I'm aware some of you have done considerable work on this, so thank you. Council officers Ian Hicks and Terry Osborne, together with their director Robin Stevens, have been terrific. Malcolm Garrow and Divya Roy from Social Ventures Australia, a very comprehensive and professionally presented report. Robert Costa for his initial involvement and his ongoing support. Keith Fagg for chairing the stakeholder group and his amazing leadership during this project. Andrew Barlam, the Geelong Ambassador for Second Bite, and Maury Anglin, the Chair of Geelong Food Relief Centre. Both have acted as an executive with Keith in the stakeholder group and individually have provided much valuable input. All of the members of the stakeholder group whose advice has been invaluable in the way they have contributed to this outcome. Des Young Husband, the Chair of GFAN, and the many other members of GFAM who have contributed much to the report and also whose contribution has been invaluable in the final outcome. The board and staff of the Geelong Food Relief Centre. And finally, Glenn Harvey, who will be the landlord of the new Geelong Food Relief, the Geelong Food Hub. Glenn, your cooperation and your extreme generosity has been immense and is very important to the success of this project. I was going to finish by making the observation that this project has been an example of council doing its best work. I'm going to change that observation and say this is an example of council and the community working together doing its best work. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Manane, and once again, congratulations to our social inclusion portfolio holders, Councillor Mansfield and Councillor Manane, for this one. We'll put that one to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. Well done. Item 5 is the policy update on a non-current asset accounting policy, to be moved by Councillor Aitken and seconded Councillor Grisbeck. Councillor Aitken.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. These are there's actually 2 issues on the agenda tonight, which are the most important ones that are coming before Council. This is the first of those. Council has a responsibility to regularly review its policies, and the first one is actually our non-current asset accounting policy. And a non-current asset is actually an asset held for use rather than exchanged that derives an economic benefit for more than 12 months. And for lay people, that actually means our land, our buildings, our plant and equipment, our roads, our drainage, our recreation, leisure and community facilities and other infrastructure that the council does hold. And what this policy is doing is giving clear directions and function responsibility to the officers in terms of what expectations are about our non-current assets. And it talks about how we acquire, how we maintain, how we renew, how we replace, how we dispose, how we value, how we revalue, how we derecognition of non-current assets, and it gives a total framework for the organisation of how to meet this accounting policy. The policy does have to follow Accounting Standards Board's policy, and that is regularly reviewed to ensure that it does meet the accounting standards. So I have nothing further to say on it, especially those people that are at home that like accounting.
Councillor Aitken. Councillor Grisbeck, can you add to that?
Thank you. Just quickly, some of the key changes in this proposed updated policy are an inclusion of a clear and concise set of objectives, inclusion of a revalued threshold for land, buildings, road and drainage assets, and an alignment of non-current asset classes with the annual financial statements. This will also ensure we're doing our accounts in accordance with the Australian accounting standards, so I think that's quite important. Thank you.
Councillor Grisbeck. Any other comments? Councillor Manane.
I'll just make a comment because Look, this work I think was commenced back prior to the election of this council. I think it might have been the administrators. And it was a bit of a priority for Councillor Harwood and myself when we had our 2-year term in the portfolio of finances. And whilst these documents are fairly dry, I draw your attention to some wording there which I think is very important. Prescribe the requirements to ensure that the asset management registers are complete, accurate and kept up to date. Now that seems like a pretty obvious thing to do, but I don't think it's always been the case with council records, and it is often, surprisingly, not the case in businesses. And it is a requirement. This requirement is so important because if you want to drive efficiency in your business, you need to understand your balance sheet. Often directors and councillors, whoever, seek to drive their management for efficiency by cutting costs in the P&L. And yes, you do achieve some rats and mice in doing that. But if you want real efficiency, you should drive it through investment in your balance sheet. And this council has a huge balance sheet, and the 3 budgets I've been involved in whilst on council, all 3 of those have had expense lines to include efficiencies. And so by having good asset management registers, we really do understand our balance sheet. We really can expect good efficiencies in the business by driving investment through the balance sheet. And this particular piece of work will help us to do it. So whilst it's dry and uninteresting, I think it can actually have great output, and hopefully as a result of the work done, we get more money to invest in our community.
Thank you, Councillor Manane. Any other comments? Back to Councillor Aitken to close.
Thank you very much. Look, I'm sorry, I'm a bit confused because Councillor Manane, were you talking about the asset management policy?
Oh, both of them.
Yeah, I think I do apologise to everyone listening home. Councillor Manane was talking about the next issue. So if you are confused about the one that's before us at the moment is the non-current asset policy of the City of Greater Geelong, and I thank Councillor Manane for his comments on the next item that's being brought before us. Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll put item 5 to the vote. So all those in favour? Thank you. Those against? Carried. Item 6, the asset management policy. Might feel a bit like Groundhog Day. Councillor Aitken to move.
It certainly is Groundhog Day, because this is the second one now that I have pleasure bringing before us tonight, and this is our asset management policy. Look, Councillor Manane has actually spoken very well about it, Madam Mayor, and look, an asset management is combining the management, the financial, economic and technical practices to try to give the objective of actually making sure we meet our service delivery levels. So, in fact, what the council is attempting to do is to manage our assets to the expectations of our community. And our community is setting what service standards we require at the moment. What we do know is that we've got significant underspend in our asset management as councillors. In fact, our asset management, we've got $2.3 billion worth of assets that we manage in the City of Greater Geelong, and that's why it is important to have a detailed policy such as this to manage those particular assets. And the challenge that we actually faced, and we did it again this year as well too, is we do have to try to balance the new assets that the community wants and renewal of our existing assets. And we haven't got that balance right in the City of Greater Geelong yet. We actually are spending too much on new assets compared to renewing our existing assets. And that's the challenge that this council has in the next 5 to 10 years, and it certainly is the challenge for all local government in Victoria, in particular with the rate capping that we do have. We are falling behind in the renewal of our existing assets that we have, and at some stage there is going to have to be a crisis discussion with the state government to talk about how we can try to address that in the local government sector, because we can't just keep building and inheriting new assets. We actually have to properly maintain our existing assets that we have. And To give a statistic to the community, at the present time we're spending about 65% of our asset renewal on new assets and only about 35 to 40% on maintenance of our existing assets. So the balance isn't right. And but what this policy is doing is setting the framework of trying to give officers an understanding of how you do actually maintain your assets to meet the community's expectations about service delivery levels. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Aitken. Well explained. Councillor Grisbeck.
Thank you, Councillor Aitken, for that. I think the one thing that I would like to just add is that this asset management policy is not just for your normal buildings, roads and pathways, but there is also the non-physical assets, such as leases and licences and digital assets. And it'll be really important going forward. We've considered a $6.6 million investment in our digital and ICT going forward for the next budget. So it's making sure that we've got all of that covered. Thank you.
Excellent point, Councillor Grisbeck. Other comments? Eddie, Councillor
I'll just
Contel.
make some minor comments. We talked about a similar topic to this at a previous council meeting, and I agree with Councillor Aitken that really this is where the most significant expenditure will need to be focused over, probably the next decade or so, because quite often, as I've stated before, is that we look at the initial investment of an asset, whether it be a sporting club rooms, whether it be the asphalting of a road, whether it be the new civic accommodation, whether it be the digital transformation, as Councillor colleague Grisbeck rightly indicated, but we forget how much funding and expenditure actually goes into maintaining that from a whole-of-life perspective. And it has far greater impacts than just financial impacts. It also has impacts on the environment as well, in depending on how we actually maintain those assets. So it's good that we're putting the work into it, but what we will need to be doing is having those serious discussions going forward on how we actually invest in this. And I agree again with Councillor Aitken that we will need to be doing that in a bipartisan approach with the state government, because they have a real part to play in this as well. So I certainly support what we've brought to the chamber today, but as a council group and the next council, this is probably where the most focus will have to go in the next decade.
Agree. Any other comments on this? Of course, our intention to increase our spend on asset renewal was waylaid by COVID this year, so that's obviously have to be deferred for future budgets and perhaps future councils. So, are there any other comments on this one? Councillor Aitken to close.
Further to add.
Okay, we'll put this one to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. Those against? Carried. Okay, item 6 is the revocation of flood-prone area designation of new lots at Ashbury Estate, stage 14. Moved Councillor Aitken. What's going on? I thought this was Councillor Monane's space. And seconded Councillor Contel. Councillor Aitken.
Madam Mayor, the next one is associated with the asphalt works and products.
Flood-prone. Item 7, we're on. Councillor Aitken, you've jumped one. You're jumping ahead. Everybody's desperate to finish tonight.
I'm happy to feel that responsibility, Madam Mayor.
Okay, so it is still you are moving this. This is the revocation of flood-prone area designation of new lots at Ashbury. There we go. That's yours.
Well, look, I actually haven't prepared myself for this one, so I'll have to speak up off the cuff. Look, we have a statutory responsibility where what we do is we zone land, and then we identify what parts of those lands are actually flood-prone. And then as engineering work is actually undertaken in the development of those areas, it can free up areas that are no longer flood-prone. And this particular area is an example of that, where there has been significant engineering works associated with the subdivisions that occur in that area, and it means that that land is able to have the flood-prone designation removed from it, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Aitken. Now, I do have Councillor Quintel seconding here, but I think it should have been Councillor Manane and Councillor Nelson.
Not a
Are you
lot
happy
more
to
to add here other than understand that the report is recommending that Council revokes the flood-prone area designated for those new lots of stage 14 in the Ashbury Estate in Horseshoe Bend Road, as Councillor Aitken has indicated. There have been works now that have occurred to prevent that 1 in 100 year flooding occurrences. And with that, I'll leave it to the ward councillors to speak to it a little further, because I know that they'll be very enthusiastic about the works that are about to occur and the planning for that area in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Quintel. Councillor Nelson.
Yeah, so this is part of the Ashbury Estate, stage 14, down near Iona College. It'll be one of the places down there. With regard to the Ashbury Estate, close to all amenities that are soon to open, including that school that I've just said. But in more detail, it covers Chamberlain Drive, Ackerman Street, and
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Councillor Harwood or Manane like to comment on this one, or are we okay? Okay. Councillor Aitken to close. Nothing further? Great. Okay, we'll put this one to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. Those against? Carried. Item 8. This looks like yours, Councillor Aitken. It's the T2000038 supply of asphalt works products and services. Councillor Quintel's excusing himself. This will be moved by Councillor Aitken and seconded by Councillor Grisbeck. Thank you. Councillor Aitken.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Look, I strongly believe in democracy, but tonight the people may think we've got a dictatorship because Councillor Aitken's moving everything. It's simply that I'm the chair of finance portfolio, and I'm also chair of city services, and in fact it's where most of the action is actually occurring. So I want to thank my officers for doing all the work during COVID-19 as to why I'm bringing all these reports before the council chamber. So thank you for the team of finance, and thank you to city services. Tonight it's my pleasure to bring our asphalt tender process report before council. Council currently spends about $8 million per year on asphalt, and we've gone to tender for that annual services, and in fact there were 5 bidders that put forward a proposal to provide asphalt services to the City of Greater Geelong. The significance of the size of the work has actually meant that all 5 of them are being recommended tonight to form a panel, and officers will be able to call upon any of those 5 providers and suppliers to actually put forward their asphalt for the significant amount of resurfacing and new surfaces that the City of Greater Geelong undertakes each financial year. The 5 organisations range from some significantly well-known national names in terms of Borrell and Fulton Hogan, and to some lesser-known names that trade in the Victorian sector in terms of Greenhall and EcoPave. We should also specially mention EcoPave because they actually, I understand, did do the plastic mix that is mixed with our asphalt. So that's something that Council's trying to expand as well too in this particular area. As one of our sustainable framework actions is to try to look for traditional materials that we can try and reduce our carbon footprint and also the impact of our waste by transferring some of that waste into our asphalt as well too. So it's a big spend, it's a big panel, because normally we probably wouldn't have this many people in a suppliers panel, but simply because of the annual spend of $8 million, why it's proposed to have a panel.
Thank you, Councillor Aitken. Councillor Grisbeck.
I just wanted to add that all of these 5 tenderers do operate businesses within the Geelong region, and they do provide significant local employment and economic benefits to the Geelong community, which is probably why they rose to the top of the procurement process. So I'd just like to pop that out. Thank you.
That's always good to know. Any other comments on this one? Councillor Aitken to close.
further. Let's get laid.
Okay, let's go. Okay, all those in favour? Thank you. Those against? Carried. If we could ask Councillor Contell to come back in and move to item 9. Clever and Creative, Our Progress on the Vision 2019. This will be moved by Councillor Murray and seconded by Councillor Contell. Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a positive, good news story that has its origin back to the community-led 30-year vision, Greater Geelong, a Clever and Creative Future, that was launched in August 2017. And a council commitment at the time, committed to reporting annually to the community, and this Our Progress 2019 is the second one of those. The report has been prepared in consultation with the Vision Partner Group. We have our vision. By 2047, Greater Geelong will be internationally recognised as a clever and creative city region that is forward-looking, enterprising and adaptive, and cares for its people and its environment. That's the vision, and from that vision there are 9 aspirations. I won't name all those, but I want to highlight something from each aspiration, and the first being the City of Greater Geelong's $3.5 million garden organics processing facility provided its first mature compost to a neighbouring farm for the use on wheat, barley and canola crops. There's the plans, of course, for the $200 million civic precinct at 137 Mercer Street, featuring our new home, co-working spaces, retail and food tenancies, plus accessible public spaces that will cover almost half of the site. We have the Greater Geelong Youth Council, which hosted the 2019 Geelong Youth Summit in October of last year. A Geelong Community Safety and Emergency Management Day that was held at Steam Packet Gardens in October, giving children the opportunity to participate in activities and meet representatives from local emergency services. There was the 2019 Australian International Air Show, which broke all the records with 132,878 public day attendance. We have the Port Phillip Ferries, which launched their service between Central Geelong and Docklands in December of last year. We had the Geelong After Dark event, which attracted over 32,000 people to Central Geelong in May of last year. Geelong's first smart nodes were switched on along the waterfront in December, improving access to Wi-Fi, USB charge facilities, high-speed internet, and the first 400 students moved into the state-of-the-art accommodation in multi-storey Braham House, adding vibrancy to Geelong's CBD. So that's I went through the report and took something out of each aspiration. And of course, you must mention, when you talk clever and creative, the UNESCO City of Design designation. And I want to take this opportunity to thank the businesses, organisations and individuals who have embraced the clever and creative vision. And of course, Geelong is the only designated City of Design in Australia. And there's been a number of events, and I just want to highlight some. They hosted a series of events in support of the 2019 Melbourne Design Week. Appointed 20 local organisations to become City of Design ambassadors, hosted events including Geelong's first Pika Kucha and the UNESCO Creative Cities Network, joined Deakin University to present at the City of Design UNESCO Public Forum event in March as part of the Singapore Design Week, presented at the UNESCO Annual General Meeting in Fabriano in Italy in June, attended a Cities of Design sub-network meeting in Detroit, USA in September, and helped form the Victorian Creative Cities Network, which includes Bendigo, Ballarat and Melbourne. And of course we were looking forward to delivering a huge program of the this Geelong Design Week in March of this year, but of course the COVID-19 put a stop to those, so we look forward to that next year. So, Madam Mayor, there's some highlights from our Progress 2019 there. There are many more, but that's mine. Thank you.
Well done. Thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Contell.
Yes, thanks, Madam Mayor. Look, this is really a progress report on how we're travelling against our strategic direction, which we know is called the Clever and Creative. And so whilst Councillor Murray here has highlighted a number of highlights which are in the plan, and you know, kudos to everyone that's involved in that. One of the highlights that I was pleased to see and involved in through the transport portfolio was the recent trial that we had participated in with the use of recycled plastics in the asphalt in Plantation Road, which is in the Windermere ward. And there's a number of other projects that have been occurring. So that really lends itself, I guess, to being clever and creative, because it falls in line with the circular economy discussions that we've been having around recyclables. So it's good to see that that's in there. But equally, there's areas that we haven't had great progress in, or that haven't changed since the last time that we reported, and that's understandable, but it's still important that we focus on those. One of those being the suburban tree canopy, where we're looking for greater than 25% canopy provided by trees, and we understand that there's challenges in that as we continue to grow and our developments continue to grow. But as councillors are aware, we've got an investment in the proposed budget of some $1 million for 1 million trees. So that will be helpful in bringing that forward as we start to plant those. And there's also work to do in the urban development side of things, which we're running behind our KPIs on at the moment. But all in all, it's a comprehensive report, and I encourage the community to review that. And again, if they have questions or would like answers, please come to us, contact your councillors, and we'll certainly try and answer those for you.
Thank you, Councillor Contell. Any other comments? Councillor Harwood.
Madam Mayor, this is a really good document to basically tell the community exactly what their council is doing, is engaged in, and what they're looking to into the future. We're often we're watched closely through the media and through the community, but we're often criticised in different areas, and that's fair enough. Criticism can be very healthy to an organisation of this size and with our close connection to the community. But I think it also demonstrates how much we actually do, how much of the hands-on grassroots connection we have to the people of our region. And even in these unusual times, we still see Geelong progressing. We still see high demand for our region, for our environment down here. So that hasn't slowed down at all. In actual fact, it's probably stepped up a little bit, and we see that through the demand for property down this way, and also the interest in working down in the Geelong area. And we continue to provide arguably one of the best environments for the working environment and for the lifestyle down here, arguably as good as any city in Australia. And we have the added benefit of our pristine beaches and our Otway Forest on the edge, and our northern regions, the Brisbane Ranges through to the Yuyangs and around. We're an incredibly lucky city, and we are an incredibly busy city. And it's about balancing that out. And I think this particular document gives an overview of how we're going about growing our city for our community, but trying to protect it for what it's actually known for and the actual true benefits it brings us. So it's a really good report. So if anyone wants to know what the council is doing and how we're going about it, read this report, and you'll get better information out of this than perhaps your local print.
Thank you, Councillor Harwood. Councillor Grisbeck.
Thank you. And I just wanted to share a couple of things that I'm pretty proud about, is that in terms of the fast and reliable connected transport network, we started work on the Shared Trails Master Plan, and I think that's to really fill the gaps that we have across a municipality that prevents cyclists and pedestrians moving freely throughout our region. Obviously, the Avalon Airport and the announcements that the international services, both between Avalon and Ho Chi Minh, and hopefully at some point we'll be able to get those back on track after we've been through this issue. One of the ones that hits me right in the heart is one of the newest A-League clubs, the Western United, played their first game at GMHBA Stadium, and I think that's a real key for soccer in this region. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grisbeck. Councillor Mason.
Just one little thing to add, Mayor Asher, and it's in the light of what Councillor Harwood said, and I thank him for recognising our pristine environment and why it's so attractive for so many people to come here. But our report, as Councillor Harwood said, is full of information, and certainly we have to be mindful that unbridled development on our greenfields will only destroy them. And so we do have our settlement strategies and our structure plans, and we do have our urban development plan as well, which states we haven't quite met our targets because of the desire for people to settle in the greenfields. And so we do need more infill and more urban inner urban development.
Great. Councillor Mason. Councillor Mansfield.
Thank you, Mayor Asher. Just like this is a useful document for the community to look over to see the work that we're doing, I think it also serves as a useful reminder for councillors to remind us of what the community told us they wanted for the Geelong region, and reporting on this annually is an opportunity to not only reflect on all the work we're doing, but also on what the community values are, or what they value, what they aspire to, what they want to see us achieving over the next 30 years. This was many people listening will be very familiar with the process that resulted in this clever and creative vision, but it just to go over that, in 2017 it was 16,000 members of our community representing all wards across the municipality, all different age groups, various backgrounds, had input into this process, and they came up with the key areas, key community aspirations, and I find it really valuable to go back over those to remind me as a councillor of what are the things that our community is really striving for and what do they want to see us doing as we go forward. And this is a 30-year vision, so this will be important for councils in the future as well, to guide them and remind them of what the values are in our community and what are the things they'd like to see us working towards. So this is a great opportunity for the community to have a look at what we're doing and assess how we're going against their aspirations, and as has already been said, take the opportunity to provide us feedback on how you think we're tracking and what else you think we could be doing to achieve that 30-year vision of a clever and creative future.
Point. Thank you, Councillor Mansfield. Any others before we go back to Councillor Murray to close?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I thought Councillor Grisbeck was a Victory fan. Anyway, as a number of councillors have said, this is a very good document and gives us a very good understanding of what council is involved in. It is a good read, and the report will be available to the community in hard copy at various council sites as well as online through the council's website. So I urge everyone to grab a copy. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Councillor Murray. We'll put this one to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. Those against? Carried. Item 10 is a contractual matter that needs to be done in confidential. Can I please have a mover and seconder to consider this matter in confidential? Councillor Harwood to move, Councillor Grisbeck to second. Thank you.
Just make a comment.
Yes.
Before we do vote on it to go into confidentiality, can we return to the practice where we actually do put a bit of a description in instead of just calling them contractual matters? Because we did we did make a commitment to be transparent as much as we can. We also adopted the principle that if a report could be written so that it could be in public, we would always try to do that as a council, but I have noticed that we've recently crept back in our agenda where it actually just says contractual matter. I certainly would encourage us to try to look again at best practice and see how we can be as transparent as possible with these matters, because I'm uncomfortable just saying something's a contractual matter.
Yep.
If we can actually give some
Descriptor
of
yep,
it,
we can take that
I
on
think
board.
that would be,
Thank you, Councillor Aitken. We'll consider that for the next one. So on item 10, can we put that one to the vote? All those in favour and those against? Thank you. Carried. Item 11, which is at the moment just a contractual matter. Can I have a mover and seconder for item 11? Councillor Nelson and Councillor Grisbeck. Thank you. All those in favour and those against? Carried. Section C, Assembly of Council. May I please have a mover and seconder for the Assembly of Council? Moved Councillor Contell, seconded Councillor Manane. Thank you. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. And Section C, Planning Delegations. May I have a mover and seconder for Planning Delegations? Mover Councillor Sullivan, seconder Councillor Mason. Thank you very much. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. Now we do move into confidential. Is that correct? We just move into confidential? Yes. Okay. So we now have... Okay. Do we move into confidential first? Close the meeting. Okay, so we have a mover and a seconder to close the meeting to the public. Moved Councillor Mason, seconded Councillor Grisbeck. Thank you. All those in favour? Thank you. Those against? Carried.